Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Marketing Mix Unmixed episode 4. Today, we have with us one of the great experts in market mix modeling out there, Daniel Althaus. His title reads Senior Advisor, Data Science and Analytics at TransUnion. But more interestingly, his LinkedIn profile reads Bob the Builder, Joe the Plumber for MM. We will know shortly why he has kept this title. It's very intriguing and exciting. But Daniel, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Thanks, Venkat. Hey, thanks for having me. Great. How about you?
Doing great, doing great. So
Yeah.
Daniel, tell us about this interesting title, right? Bob the Builder, Joe the Plumber for MM. I find it really interesting. Can you elaborate a bit more on this?
Yeah, sure. So when I was thinking of it, I was trying to come up with something short, everybody would understand, and but also could be a little bit catchy and funny. So Bob the Builder is this children cartoons person, which builds stuff like very orchestrated, well thought out, with a lot of teamwork and going through things in a I think admirably intelligent way. I really like it. And then Joe the Plumber was this figure in, I think, 2008 Obama's election campaign on the
Mhm.
opposite side, who basically complained about everything and like everything's broken and he has to fix it and how to live with it. And I thought it was a good reflection of what I do.
Mhm.
Am I Bob the Builder? Yeah, sure. If I do an initial build or have the time and resources for like a really elaborate rebuild, I can build something beautiful. But I'll also a lot of times I'm Joe the plumber. I'm looking at what things went wrong, what data was wrong, how we're going to fix it, even if the data was wrong, something was based upon. So realistically, I'm both halves of this equation.
Great. I have a 1-year-old, and
Yeah,
he's pretty keen on Bob the Builder and Noddy and all that. But
nice.
whenever he watches it, I'm going to remember this particular explanation that you gave.
Don't show him Joe the plumber.
Yeah, I will not show him Joe the Plumber,
Yeah.
but Bob the Builder will certainly evoke his
Okay,
interest. Uh,
right.
Daniel, I think you have been in this, marketing measurement space for more than a decade, and I consider you as one of the, experts in MM as well. Can you talk about the origins of MM? How would you explain MM to a layman?
Um, well, I start from a business perspective, and I've always looked to Peter F. Drucker for a lot of inspiration because he, just defined basic terms and started to structure thinking in this space. And one of the questions he would like to answer, of course, is like, how do you market a product? Right, and he said he had this understanding that selling at some point, which would be cold calling to us or even walking door to door, would be superfluous at some point, and we would design perfectly designed products or services so people would just buy it because it's tailored to their needs. Of course, that hasn't happened quite yet. But the idea of marketing is, of course, make it available to people and make it known to people. And then you would, want to know if does that work. And if you're a layman, you probably have seen ads, you've questioned, do ads actually work? Do I buy something because there's an ad? And also people question, do ads manipulate us? And the answer to that is probably no. Like everybody has tried that, but of course, if you think from the counterfactual, how would you buy a product you don't know nothing about, right? So if there was no marketing, then the market would be stagnant. It would be word to mouth or just the same stuff all the time. And marketing, as we understand it, makes it possible for people to acquire new knowledge of new services, new products. And you would want to know, how does this work? And how does this work is you can watch. Sometimes it's pretty simple. You see, like a big campaign by a company, and then the sales go up in that week or a couple of weeks later, and you can make a visual connection. And marketing mix modeling now would try to quantify that relationship in numerous ways. You could say, hey, how much was one of my TV dollars worth in revenue by the product? You
Mhm.
could say, how was the support by promotion or placement during that point? And everything basically comes from refining that concept, and then just on the history, which I think is really interesting. So there were a couple of really interesting companies, I think in the early zeros, startups, which aim to do marketing mix modeling at scale in a much more IT responsive environment. So with optimization tools and everything that follows from there, and much faster. One of these companies called Market Share is basically the foundation of what we do at TU. So Market Share got acquired by Newstar. Newstar got acquired by TU. That's how I ended up there. But throughout my career, also funny piece, like when I joined Newstar, the sales guy told me, don't do MMM. MMM is dead. Do MTA. Then like that has switched a couple of times during my career. So it switched back to don't do
Which
MTA. Like
time frame was this? Which year was this?
since 2019. So in
Okay,
2019,
okay,
it was all MTA and MMM was dead. And
okay.
then a couple of years later, it was like, don't do MTA, that's dead. Like nobody
Mhm.
does MTA anymore except TransUnion. And it's all MMM. It's starting to switch back, interestingly now enough. Yeah, MMM has been, a fad. It has been faded almost from existence. And then now it's enjoying really high popularity. Google and Meta have ventured into the space, publishing their own open source versions, Robin and Meridian. So it's really exciting. It looks like right now it's the future of measurement.
Yeah, you're quite right that, a lot of people had written off MMM.
Mhm.
Myself and my co-founder Ridhima, we got exposed to MM somewhere around about 2013, 2014. We kind of
Okay.
learned about MM from the, gray-haired people.
Yeah.
And, I think 3 years into it, everybody started telling that, hey, it's going to be dead. Why don't you focus on, AI, machine learning? And
Yeah.
that time, the vision was a big thing, like you're using AI for vision, but then it quietly died down, all that CNN architecture and everything kind of died down. But now we
Yeah.
have the LLMs. Uh, but yeah, I mean, my co-founder did tell me that time that, what, MM is going to be big because, there's this privacy thing happening and maybe in future, it's going to, and she went against the, tide and said that, I'm going to set up a company in 2019, even though she
Yeah.
had this idea from 2017. It took her 2 years to convince herself and family and everyone to, start the company. But yeah,
Nice.
look, now we are, looking at MM with such fanfare. Uh,
Yeah. That's a nice spot there. That's really,
yeah,
I like that. I like the take also. Yeah. Pretty good.
yeah.
Yeah.
When we talk about MM, a lot of people say it is market mix modeling. Now, a lot of people also say media mix modeling. Where do you stand on that? Do you call it marketing mix modeling or is it media mix modeling?
Oh, it's marketing mix modeling for sure. You
Mhm,
need to know so much more than just the media perspective to adequately
mhm,
put a number on incrementality. I mean,
mhm,
there's just so much going on. I mean, it becomes logical if you look at a Black Friday sales versus like just a regular week, for a retailer. Like the same amount of money you spend on a Black Friday week can get you, several times the amount of revenue you spend on than you spend on a regular week, and that's because other factors are playing a role. And if you
mhm.
would stick with the simple additive media mix only model, you would probably not get a good answer from that. You would underestimate the Black Friday effects and probably overestimate the regular week effects. So marketing mix model.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree with you on that. It has to be called market mix modeling because it gives a more holistic picture. But of course, there could be scenarios where a very new startup is just starting off with, performance marketing channels like,
Yeah.
Meta's ASC or, Google's PMax campaign. Yeah, in that case, you
Yeah.
can call it media mix. But traditionally, it is marketing mix modeling, but eventually you will get to the point of marketing mix modeling, right? You will have to factor in prices, you will have
Yeah.
to factor in promotions and everything. But everybody, even if you start with media mix modeling, I think the end point is marketing mix modeling, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and you could always start with a couple of media variables and take a look at that. I mean, it's still going to give you some useful information, and a lot of
Exactly.
basically every company that markets will look at the effects of their marketing.
Mhm.
Like from like it's very simple. You might have like a local restaurant, and you send out flyers and put a promo code in there, and then you check with people. Did you come with a promo code or not? Did you hear about that? So
Mhm.
even that's a that's marketing mix modeling in a way, right? So you're trying to trace the effects of your marketing. It's very rough. It doesn't give you a precise answer, or may even be misleading, but it's a start for an answer. So that's,
Mhm.
would be the same with 2 or 3 media channels.
Understood. Daniel, I was just going through your profile, and something interesting struck me that you had a training as a market researcher, right?
Yeah,
I have had some experience as well.
yeah.
But does the training in market research help you better appreciate, how the data is collected, and all that? Basically, appreciation for, the data.
It does. I mean, like in especially in the case of survey data, of course,
Mhm.
what's going on there. Maybe you have an idea of what the vendor does, that produces these survey results, what it means. I mean, it's super noisy, super messy data most of the time. It's really hard to work with brand equity.
Yes.
But it is like one of the most gratifying things and one of the most important things. And I've always, I've studied sociology, and if people ask me about social science, I would say it's like that's the hardest thing to measure, right? So there's so much error. You're trying to pry in this case, the probability somebody will buy from their brain. They don't even know that themselves. They can't, assess that. When we did this testing in market research, people who would say like my percentage, my probability to buy is 0%, still you would find out 5% of those bought in like a 4 weeks time period, and of the people that say 100%, only 60 buy or something like that. It's still the best assessment if you ask them, and if you average over respondents, it gets kind of reliable. But it's an incredible hard science to figure anything out from the brain of a human, I guess. And that's what market research gives you as a basis.
Mhm. Great. Yeah, I mean, my experience is also similar. The experience that I had with market research, it helps me better appreciate how data is collected. I know that for a fact that, some of the MM inputs that you have, all the media channels, that can be easily got through APIs
Yeah,
nowadays. But when
yeah,
you talk about brand equity MMMs, you know how difficult it is to collect those
yeah,
data. You
yeah,
have to go onto
sure.
the ground,
Yeah,
collect data, and it's very tricky to, code something as stoma or font. I
yeah,
think you must have experienced that. Do
yeah.
you have some recollection of conducting such surveys?
Um, Sorry, I didn't get the last part. Some
The TOMA,
recollection.
the top of the mind
Yeah,
awareness or the spontaneous awareness, have you
yeah.
conducted such research?
Yes, yes. I mean, I did online surveys for a lot
Mhm.
of these things, and also tried to pinpoint, the root causes of these developments. So yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, it can depend so much on which, is it an open-ended question? Which panel provider do you go with? Which set of competitors do you include? Which vertical do you include? Which target group? So, and I'm not exaggerating if I tell you, like sometimes we switch survey vendors, or our clients switch survey vendors, and we have 80% consideration before that, and then you suddenly have 20% consideration, and you're like, what was going on here? So, and you find out, that they switched the target group, or they completely changed the question, and then that's where Joe the plumber comes in. Now we
Mhm.
got a problem, and because the model's built on something completely different, and we have to switch it to a new reality or new subset of brand equity.
Yeah, most people think, MM takes a long time because the modeling involved takes a lot of time, but it's not the case. I mean, it's predominantly because of the data, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we sign up with a client, and they say that, hey, we're going to provide you this data within a week.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like
But
we have all the data here. We signed the contract. We send over the data. Like bam, there you are. Day one, you can just go ahead and model, and it's never like
yeah, and week becomes 2 weeks, and sometimes it has also become 2 months for us in our
yeah,
case.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's not that I fault the clients. It's
yeah,
really tricky to get so many data points
yeah,
together.
yeah,
You have, let's say, 50, 60 variables which you are operating if you're a big CPG
yeah,
company. And it becomes really tedious, to get all those data. But yeah,
yeah.
that's where the biggest bottleneck is for MM.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah, I totally agree.
let's talk about some of the myths around MMM, right?
Yeah.
The number one myth is that MM is just correlation. What do you have to say about that?
Um, I mean, the correlation wouldn't happen if there weren't mechanisms in the background. The question is, and I think we discussed this on a post before. How do you want to read it? Like you could easily read MMM as marketing decisions being made because of sales results, right? So the sales are low and down, and then management decides to spend more to make up for the lost sales. So you could actually take an MMM and probably make a marketing decision model out of it. But it's not that, that's not the causal direction that interests us. So we're defining concepts of cause and effect that go implicitly into this model, and that is, marketing is independent of the other factors. It's exogenous in our talk, and it will affect the model system during the defined duration. So you have levers to pull, and those levers are classic marketing, of course, but also price, promotion, placement, distribution, stuff like that. So our concept of how do we run a company, which again I would relate back to Peter F. Drucker in very simple terms, and a lot of startups use these very simple terms and work from that. Informs our way of structuring the MMM. And then I think the point becomes, do we question that? Because like we go in with all these neat assumptions, everything's independent, everything has impact at time zero. And if you think about it, it's probably not true. And if you look deeper into the data, you will always find exceptions to that. You will find dependencies, you will find multicollinearity between different variables, which inhibits management. You will have some phenomenon called endogeneity, which like as a simple layman concept, you could think about uh, people clicking on Google Shopping to buy items, and then Google Shopping will look terrific and like the best investment you can make. But if you figure in other factors, you will find out that actually people just click on the link from Google Shopping, and if you don't spend anymore, like Amazon recently cut all their Google Shopping budget to zero, people will still buy there, right? So people will not use the comfortable link, and you might lose some people, but you will still sell stuff because people will find the stuff yourselves and maybe find their own way to Amazon. So that's all these things that endanger a causal MMM. But to say it's just correlation, I think is taking it too simple.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, people do trivialize, the rigor that's involved in MM by just calling it MMS correlation. I mean, I have tried my best to, explain it to them that it is not simply a correlation. Firstly, because correlation is between just two variables, and in MM you have like so many variables, right? It could go up to even 20, 25 variables, and all of them, we are talking about an interaction effect between them, and it is just not a, marginal
Yeah,
effect of one variable on KPI, right?
yeah,
So we are trying to mimic the marketing reality. And how could it be simply correlation when all of these variables are involved together? And we are trying to understand the response of it on the KPI. So
yeah.
it simply cannot be correlation. But yeah, people would like to trivialize MM. I guess these people are from the MTA background, who just wants to, badmouth MM.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think statistically nuanced people like yourself and mine, we can definitely appreciate that it is simply not correlation. There's so much nuance to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Cool.
Sorry.
Yeah, I didn't. That's a totally different take. Okay, I didn't see where you were coming from this, but as opposed to MTA, okay, becomes a even more interesting question actually. Yeah,
Mhm.
because like I've modeled MTA myself, and there's something compelling about it. If you can really tie like time series data to a single person, you can say, they saw this ad and they convert 2 days
Yeah.
later, so this ad gets credit for it. So that's super nice, and you can do absolutely tons of interesting stuff with that. But you miss out on so much data that also plays a role because you probably can't gather it and tie it to those conversion paths. So yeah, interesting
Yeah.
trade-off.
Yeah. I also interviewed a very interesting statistician by the name Adrian Olszewski. I guess you
Hmm.
follow him on LinkedIn as well. So he has been saying that, multilinear regression, it is actually modeling the conditional mean, right? So
Yeah,
if you think about, linear regression modeling the conditional mean, it is no longer a simple correlation, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I,
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, these nuances, it's very tricky to unpack it for the layman and convey to the marketeers that, hey, you know what, MM is just not simple correlation. There's so much to it, so much more nuance to it. But yeah, it's again,
Yeah.
a knowledge exposition problem rather than, something else.
Yeah.
Coming to the next myth, people say that MM can't work with, just two or three variables. What's your take on that?
I think I already mentioned it. I mean, it's a start, right? So, like if you want to evaluate marketing efforts of a company, some information is better than non-information. So, and it depends on your size, of course, also. Like if you're a startup and maybe you just have two or three activities. I've definitely, watched my wife have a startup with only some marketing on Google, some on Meta, and some like social media marketing herself. You could definitely watch that, and you can gather a lot of information from there. Surely you could build an MMM. If it's worth the effort, I wouldn't know.
Yeah, I mean, we also did an MM for an influencer in Middle East, and she
Hmm.
was spending, roughly around about $1 million. I mean, of course, it's not a big
Yeah,
amount for like when you compare it to the company, but for an
yeah,
individual, that's a big money. I
yeah,
mean, given and she was just, spending on Meta ASE campaigns and Google PMax campaigns, and we could really, work wonders with the MM there. I mean,
yeah,
of course, it's just technically two variables, but it also tells you, what is the baseline effect, which
yeah,
is the brand equity. So technically, you're answering incrementality with MM itself. Of course, we'll
yeah,
talk about how MM is also a big incrementality test in the down the segment.
yeah,
But yeah, it's great to know that you agree that MM can work with two or three variables, because linear regression can simply work with even one variable, right? It's called simple linear regression at the
yeah,
end of the day. Yeah.
yeah,
The other myth is, MM requires multi-million dollar spends on each channel for it to really work. What's your
yeah.
take on that?
It requires multi-million dollars of spend for companies like mine to be hired. No, sure. I mean, I already mentioned my wife's business. You could definitely do marketing mix modeling on that. Also think there are a lot of small or mid-sized companies, especially in Germany, that probably do MMM once a year on the special cases, and of course, they can immensely profit from analyzing their marketing benefits. They might not have that much to spend or optimize their budget in the end, but it will tell them a lot about the direction they're going and what they can do
Mhm.
better in their business. Yeah, sure.
Exactly. Uh, when we think about MM, the workhorse behind its multilinear regression that we just shortly alluded to,
Mhm.
do you think enough people really understand, multilinear regression to begin with, to better appreciate MM? You can talk from your experience, maybe in Germany or across the globe.
Um, I would say like for the most part on what we call consulting services, so the people working in our country company or in other companies that directly work with the results, they do have a good and sufficient understanding for the most part. On client part, there can be a lot of distrust or misunderstanding, like maybe for entertainment's sake, in on the German side, there's just a huge mistrust in data science, I
Mhm.
think, and statistics
Okay.
in general. Like you will, so every once in a while, you will have a new person at a company joining that kind of questions the results and
Mhm.
becomes very distrustful, and then you end up having to explain, statistical regression to them, like starting with really a simple linear regression. So there's not that much. Uh, like knowledge there, for starters, for a lot of people that work in a company space. But also, I've not met too many people which refuse the content. Like
Mhm.
if you really explain it to them in simple terms and also show them some graphical evidence, usually
Mhm.
they will be quickly turned around. And then maybe in the US, there's more trust in there. And like, if you say, hey, we're this fancy data company, we know what we're doing, they trust your competence more, which I think is great. I really like working with US companies. But then again, yeah, sometimes maybe you need to be more proactive and talking to people and actually explaining the basic concepts behind it. And they will be really grateful if somebody like actually took their time to explain it to them. Yeah. I would say the level of information is the same across countries. The attitude people take from it is different.
Mhm. That was a very interesting perspective. In one of your LinkedIn posts, you had mentioned that, MM is implicitly causal.
Hmm.
That's how I think we interacted first through
Yeah.
that particular post. I totally agree with you on this, but if you can elaborate it for our audience, like why do you think MM is, implicitly causal?
Because the processes that generate the data are causal. Um,
Hmm.
I've already alluded to this apparatus, basically, people trying to pull levers and make things work, and sometimes things do work, and sometimes they don't. But mostly, you can, you're trying to look to quantify how do these relations work, and also sometimes do these relationships exist. So it's you're trying to assess a causal system that's a corporation. Like each corporation believes it has the means to change their fortunes and head the way they want to head. What's interesting, I guess, is if that fails, right? So if the corporation shrinks, revenues doesn't grow, and they're putting all the effort in, and then the questions come up, right? So like, is our product rightly configured for the market? Do our customers satisfied? Does our marketing work? And all these questions come up. So then you have to recalibrate the whole thing and put all these causal connections that you assume to be working normally into question. And that's
Hmm.
also the intersection, I guess, of market research and marketing analytics.
Yeah, I had also interviewed, Alex Eisenhardt from
Mhm.
London, and he had also stated that, what, everything that we do in marketing mix modeling or just say marketing measurement is causal in nature. It's just that people don't realize it. And last week, I also, interviewed Dr. Nick Huntington-Clean, a causal
Mhm.
expert from USA, and he also had to say that, if you can control for all the variables, then perhaps what you're doing is definitely causal. I think in MM, it's pretty easy to, check it up in the sense that, hey, you have invested in only 4 or 5 media channels or marketing channels. And if you have data around it, you're pretty much control for all the variables, right? And the
Yeah.
MM that you're doing is definitely causal, or it's at least implicitly causal. You can further do a lot of other causal tests if you want to, like difference and differences and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, maybe just one last point about
Sure.
the how many variables does it take to fully explain
Hmm.
that? Oftentimes like surprisingly few. So you
Hmm.
would think, because this could be an n-dimensional process, and you could always imagine
Hmm.
some data missing. But most of the time, like two, three, four variables will give you a really, really good understanding of how a system works. It might not give you a precise reading of a marketing channel, but it will give you the basic, working of the system. So
Yeah,
that's.
totally agree on that. I mean, we do an analysis called as the principal component analysis. I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure you must have heard about
Yeah,
it. Like, we don't do anything actionable from it, but we just,
yeah,
just for the fun of it, see, okay, if you had 50 variables, let's see, how many of
right,
those
yeah,
variables are explaining, let's say,
yeah,
80% of the variance on your
yeah,
KPI or 90% of the variance. So you're
yeah,
right in the sense that, sometimes, it does not take all the 50 variables. Maybe 15 or 20 variables are enough to explain
yes,
90% of
yeah,
the changes,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And also, yeah, I use shapley value analysis a lot
Okay.
to check out, the relative importance of variables. So you can reduce sets, right? You don't need like, 100 promotions. Probably like, two or three promotion variables will tell you about like 70 or 80% of the information. So that's what you want to go with. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty optimistic it's possible to have a causal model without, taking years or yeah,
Yeah. Without boiling
putting
the
in
ocean.
billions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, coming back to the point of Shapley, yeah, it's a very,
Hmm.
unsung hero, I would say. We use Shapley values a
Yeah.
lot too. I mean, for one of our, patent pending technique, which is the granularity, we
Hmm.
kind of use it heavily, and it has proven wonders for most of our clients.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can see a lot of similarities between our thought processes. Yeah,
Okay, cool.
yeah. Do you think MM naturally attracts politics and acrimony?
Yes, it does. So, it's also tough. Like, imagine you're the paid search department, which usually marketing analytics comes in via the more offline channels, and the online people basically do their own thing. They have last click attribution and all their systems set up. And now you're conveying the message, sorry, but you think, like one click is worth $2, but actually it's just 50 cent. Like, how could you assume, that goes well with the paid search people? It is a challenge every time, but it's a sporty challenge. It's
Hmm.
you have to go in there. I recently had a presentation with a client where we rated the online business as basically over budgeted, which happens quite frequently. Uh, and we were very nervous about like basically the head of online media coming in, and he came in and basically said, "Let me guess, you're suggesting to cut our Google Shopping budget by 50% or something like that." So we were taken by surprise. So he had figured it out himself. But of course, yeah, the results mean sometimes pleasant, sometimes unpleasant truths for people inside the company. So there is a lot of political infighting going on with the results.
Yeah, totally agree on that. I mean, today I think my co-founder posted a post on LinkedIn saying that, hey, MM is both a unifier and a divider. I think to
Hmm.
the point of how it can divide a team. From our experience, we have always seen that, hey, if you're doing MM, let's say, and you're refreshing it, let's say half yearly, the brand team is always very happy because they see the baseline and they say, oh, look, it has moved up by 1 percentage
Yeah,
point or
yeah,
2 percentage point.
yeah,
But the performance team is like, hey, why is Google's contribution gone down? Why
yeah,
has
yeah,
Meta's contribution gone down from
yeah,
last time?
yeah,
It's a very tricky thing, but yeah, at the end
yeah,
of the day, you have to lean on statistics to prove to them that yes, indeed, this is what has transpired on the
yeah,
ground, and it's not, something hanky panky, right?
yeah,
Talking again about KPIs in MM,
yeah.
which KPIs have been the most trickiest to model for you?
Um, Apart from the mentioned brand equity,
Mhm.
which just moves much more slowly, which is complicated by the fact that might need to wait a month to get actually the first
Mhm.
survey results for March, and then it's kind of like a rotating average most of the time. So the effects have much more noise than the other KPIs. I would say it's been tough to model leads
Yes.
because a lot of clicks produce leads, and technically a click is a lead, for many purposes. So it's really tough to say, step down from there and say there's something incremental about that lead. And the rest of the lead, would have been generated anyway. If you can clearly see, we bought this lead from, company XYZ. They sent us the lead. We want to work with the lead. So why doesn't it get full credit in your MMM? So that's been the toughest experience. And then
Yeah.
everything, of course, like that small number KPIs are hard to do. So everything. If you ever model large sales numbers, revenue, stuff like that's really thankful. There's a lot of noise that just gets canceled out at that level. But if we're talking about sales of maybe 10 or 20 items per week, that can be really, really hard to model.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, historically speaking, if you are, dealing with, let's say, CPG and FMCG MMs, those are really
Yeah,
easy in the sense that, you can easily model it. And
yeah,
some time ago, we had also published a report. I mean, we were planning to convert it into a research paper, but we simply did not have enough data points. We had something to the tune of, I think, 25, 30 client results.
Yeah.
but predominantly FMCG, CPG, and their MAPE on MM was hovering around about, I think, 5% and thereabout. You can easily get a good model, but to
Yeah.
the point of modeling leads, we have done that. We have also tried to model crowd attendance for a sporting club, a football
Yeah.
club. That was very tough as well. And then
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
we published a case study on that. And then we also tried very recently to model the new trials of software subscription, SaaS model
Hmm.
for a company. And again, that's very tricky because those subscriptions are B2B, right? And
Yeah.
the numbers are very small compared to your,
Yeah.
FMCG sales
Yeah.
number, which is in millions, but here it's just in sometimes
Yeah.
in single digits, sometimes on a good month, it is hundreds. If they have a
Yeah.
premium kind of thing, it's
Yeah.
100. And the
Yeah.
problem really happens when you are trying to calculate metrics like ROAS or MROAS, right? It is
Yeah.
return on ad spend.
Yeah.
Your, return is, let's say, single digit, but your spends are in such thousands
Yeah.
of dollars. You end
Yeah.
up in decimal points.
Yeah.
So you will have to think about other metrics equivalent of ROAS, like
Yeah.
for every $1,000, how many
Yeah.
new trials have come to me, or how many for every $1,000, how many new people are
Yeah.
coming to the club, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Really cool. Yeah. I'm going to read that case study. Really interested. So soccer, football.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
we call it football, right? I mean, it's the Americans who call it soccer.
Yeah. I'm German myself, so we call it football in Germany, but I was like, very conscious of the international environment, and most people go with soccer.
Nice. So let's come to a more controversial topic. That is,
Yeah.
which MM techniques have you used more, either Bayesian MM or, Frequentist MMM?
Tricky because I'm a classical trained frequentist statistician from my background. Actually did some clinical trials at some point in my own company after finishing university. So I did a lot of veterinary medicine and stuff like that. So I was very heavily primed by all the frequentist methodology. But at some point, I thought, the Bayesians do have a point about, like information sparsity and how you leverage previous knowledge of data, and isn't a lot of the work we do ahead of frequentist testing basically just Bayesian work to assure that the test works and it's set up nicely. So what we do, like for the most part, we're using frequentist algorithms. So, like weighted least squares, regression and stuff like that. Um, but I'm using a lot of Bayesian techniques ahead of that and after that. Like, like if we're looking at two channels which just have maybe $20,000 of spend, and it's really, really low, low volume, low signal marketing channels, and maybe you're looking at a big company that these two channels will hardly cause any signal in the overall revenue or sales. You might want to pool them, right? So because you can't estimate them separately, but you can estimate something about them together. You might have more data points. You might have more, more of a longer response curves. You have different levels of activity, so you get a better read on these two media variables if you pool them together than just doing them separately. But it gets more rigid like that, right? So you don't have granular information. You have the same information about both touch points. And it will evolve in the future from that common starting prior now to different posteriors at some point. So I always compare it to spine surgery. So if people have really hurt spines, they you fix the parts of the spine, so they get filled with concrete and you can't move them anymore, and that allows them not to be as flexible anymore, but it removes the pain. So that's kind of the Bayesian strategy, I would say. Remove the pain, like make it more rigid. It's not as flexible, but it's a better and more reliable starting point. There's less pain there, I guess. And then it can move from the priors into different posteriors over time. And that's the neat part about Bayesian MMM for me.
Yeah, I've had a reverse case in
Really?
comparison to you, in the sense that, yes, of course, I did my statistics the frequentist way, but then
Hmm.
somewhere I thought that, hey, you know what, Bayesian is more appealing, just like everybody thinks so. So I call myself disgruntled Bayesian lover, right? In the sense that I was so enamored by it initially in my career, I wanted to
Yeah,
apply it to everything. But I did start applying it. And then as they say, when the tire hits the road, you realize what it's lacking. I found
yeah,
that, Bayesian lacks a lot in the sense that, of course, let's be specific about MMM. I mean, people say that, hey, you can specify priors, right? For example, if I want to know if I want to specify ROI of a TV, I can say, hey, this is the probability distribution, and I believe, the ROI is between 3.2 to 4.2.
yeah,
But it's starting off from a very subjective point of view, right? How do you know that is the exact prior to begin with?
yeah, yeah,
And I can also say that, people think it is very easy to specify a prior, but as a statistician, I can say that it's very tough. People
yeah,
predominantly
yes,
just use only two probability distribution. Generally speaking, either it is log normal or it is
yeah,
just, normal distribution that people are habituated to. But,
yeah,
there are so many distributions out there which
yes,
the real distribution could be
yeah,
following.
yeah,
And I think most of the MM vendors, either Bayesian or let's say Bayesian vendors, they are, I think, 80% frequentist at the end of the day. Because, businesses have to make a decision. If you go up to them and say that, hey, you know what, there's 80% probability that the ROI of TikTok is between 3.1 and 5.2. I
yeah.
mean, they are going to scratch their heads. I mean, okay, tell me what is it exactly? Because I've got
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
optimize this
Just
number.
give me a point estimate.
Yeah.
Like nobody like wants to hear. Yeah, sometimes people want to hear an interval, but just for to know how great the interval is, not for the interval itself. So, yeah,
Yeah, so if
that's
you look at even all the Bayesian vendors and their softwares, like even Meridian, they kind of give you a point estimate at the end of the day through,
yeah,
their HDI or something. So again, they are not staying true to the, we quantify
yeah,
uncertainty,
yeah.
you know, uh, uh, uh,
That's true.
shouting. Yeah, but yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we can talk about Bayesian versus frequentist a lot. Maybe I'll call you in for another podcast, but
Yes.
let's move on to another topic today.
Yeah.
That is again another controversial topic. Do you think MMs can be fully automated?
I wonder why they haven't been. No, it's like you wouldn't even need AI to it. It can just be rule based. And I've seen attempts at it. And yeah, I get the idea that like parts of it can be automated, but probably there's so much, that's the plumber side again. There's so much data going in that's turns out to be wrong, or information that turned out to be wrong, that you end up like opening it yourself again and again and again, and changing things. And for AI automation, that can work kind of neatly, right? We've experimented with it. But then you need to be able to explain it at some point. And that's exactly where the questions come in, and then you can't say, hey, layer two said that's a good idea to spend money here, or the coefficients can't be the wrong way around. So everybody assumes that this is consistent. So yeah, that's where you have manual intervention. So I think you can fully automate it, but you will have manual intervention every other phase or something like that.
Yeah, excellent point about, manual intervention, right? MM is something, that requires constant calibration and validation. People think you have to do calibration and validation only once in MM, but I think it keeps happening
Yeah,
at every phase. For example, you do feature selection, okay, and you see that, hey, the features that have put into the model, are they accurate or not? Then again, you do a, goodness of fit test, you are doing calibration, and you're also doing validation, right? And
yeah,
once your model is fit, again, you do a calibration validation. You do saturation curves, again you do a calibration validation, so
yeah,
it keeps on and on. So there's a lot of pauses that is happening, and as you rightly said, human intervention at every step of the way. So I think
yeah.
it cannot be fully automated. Maybe it is good. I mean, some artisanal things are not fully automated, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and probably will remain so. Like when what I see from, maybe your impression is different, and I would like to hear about it. What the impression I get from AI vendors in the space is that they're not building custom models for client, but they're having a generalized model they're applying to everything.
Mhm.
And that's why, where they basically can feed in everything and rate every channel because it just gets rated with kind of like starting with a default prior they have
Yeah.
for this particular channel. And of course, that makes it easier in a way, but also riskier, to apply this to an individual client business. So I can see, how that can exactly hold up for each single client because each client business is so different in a way. So
Yeah.
my guess is that we're gonna see more automatic applications, but then people like modelers being or modeling being more mixed with consulting services, then people basically consulting on the results and also able to open the hood and look into the engine and say what exactly went on there. What's your impression
Yeah.
of that?
Yeah, I agree with you. We have a different philosophy in the sense that we believe in the power of AI, but at the
Mhm.
same time, we also feel that, AI is almost found wanting when it has to be, building really robust models, right? I mean, for example, MM is a classic example. It cannot build a really accurate MM model. We have tried that many times. So what we do is we make sure that our trained statisticians build the models very accurately, and post that you can use AI to, discern
Yeah,
information, publish information for, through
yeah,
something like our MMGPT. You can ask
yeah,
questions of your
yeah,
MM model, you can
yeah,
chat with your MM model, but do
yeah,
not touch the nucleus of it,
yeah,
right? The
yeah,
nucleus has to be handmade.
yeah,
So that's what
yeah,
our philosophy is.
yeah. I think I agree with that. Yeah.
Uh, there is also a big misconception that, MM should do well on forecasting. And if it does well on forecasting, hey, MM is really accurate. Do you think this forecasting, focus on MM is right?
That's an interesting question. I mean, it really depends on the business. So like
Mhm.
I've seen everything from 50% media contribution to 5% media contribution. If you have 50% media contribution, and you don't get the attribution right, you won't get the forecasting right. Right? But if you have like a really small part of the business that's media driven, then the forecasting becomes, you could get it right with all the other variables, but you could totally get the attribution wrong. So it's the same thing or essentially the same thing if media contribution is high. If media contribution is low, forecasting is much easier than right attribution. So you need to focus on the attribution first there when the low media contribution models, I think.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point that you make, that you have to focus on attribution more. I was just talking to another MM, company vendor, and he told me that, hey, MM is actually a attribution problem first and not a forecasting problem. I think we are all on the same page in that regard.
Yeah,
You need to know, the exact proportion of, your media channels and marketing channels and how much
yeah,
they've contributed to sales.
yeah,
There are, I think, millions of ways to, correctly, forecast sales, but at the same time, you will not be doing justice to what really transpired in the marketing reality.
yeah,
What kind of
yeah,
proportion led to the exact sales?
yeah,
Because you're missing the forest for the trees if you're just focusing on your
yeah,
forecasting. So
yeah.
yeah, I think, yeah.
I think that's just a general danger. Sometimes you lose yourself and you build a really beautiful model and it has a fantastic map and you forget about like what is the actual goal of this, and this is
Mhm.
attribute levers that companies can influence. It's
Mhm.
not building a beautiful model. Yeah,
Let's talk about the long-term effects of MM, right? A lot of people say that,
yeah,
hey, MM can't give you long-term effects. But, I have asked the same people, can you please define what do you mean by long-term effect?
yeah.
And then it is crickets, nobody tells me the exact response of it. What do you think of this
I'm actually
situation?
I'm actually a specialist on the topic, and I've done
Okay,
a few presentations with that.
nice.
So first of all, like at some point we had to define long term, just to make it
Hmm?
to have a
Feasible. Yeah,
concept, right? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So we said so everything we considered everything to 26 weeks to be near term, and then
Hmm.
27 weeks to up to a year to be midterm, and then
Hmm.
long term 1 year plus.
Hmm.
Because it was just a convenient category, so we went with that. And then, can you see, like in our usual framework, can you see near midterm or long-term effects? Yes, sure. Sometimes they do happen there. Like like especially if you think about like automotive or telecom providers, people can't even make that choice to buy something, right? Or they might want to buy something, but they're still in their contract with a mobile phone provider, might have to wait a year till the contract runs up. Or a car you buy every couple of years, but you don't, only look for a car once your car breaks down and you buy it the next day. So it's a long journey. And sure, you can see, the tracks of these actions, way years back in some cases. But then again, if we want to enforce stationarity in our model systems, which is one of the central
Mhm.
theorems, I guess, that means that the model doesn't evolve and that inputs subside at some point. You can never actually truly capture long-term effects. You need to change the model type to do that. And we've worked with vector autoregression
Mhm.
to have models that take up an impulse, and then the impulse gets processed, and it doesn't leave the system. So some of your marketing effect persists and stays in the system and raises the baseline. So that's a way to model this and to represent this. But then again, the question is only how long does it stay? Like, we've seen through COVID that it gave this enormous boost to some companies in the online
Yeah.
space. And, we've seen they've decayed over the years. So maybe the stationarity people are right in the end. It just takes longer time to do for the impulse to decay. It's not, kept in the system forever. So I think there are ways to model long-term effects, true long-term effects, but I'm not long enough in the industry to really assess whether all effects disappear or some persist.
Yeah, I mean, whether MM can measure long-term effects, depends on how you define what is a long-term effect. I think in your case, you've excellently, demarcated like, hey, the first 26 weeks are short-term, the next 26 weeks are middle, and the last is, the long-term. And
Yeah.
if you go about it that way, yes, you can definitely do it. I had an interesting interaction, some few years ago with an American MM vendor. He was of Russian origin, and
Mhm.
he stated to me that, hey, you know what? Why do you care about the long-term effects? In the long run, we are all dead. He was quoting a phrase, I think, in the long run, some economist had said that. And also, he said that, only, Soviet Union and, other former countries used to do this
Yes.
five-year-old planning. I don't know, is it something like that? So
Yeah.
nobody in marketing does that five-year-old
Yeah.
planning,
Yeah.
right? I mean, so
Yeah.
why do you want to care about,
Yeah.
something that is in the horizon of 2 years, 5 years?
Yeah. But there's also like some of company politics involved, like CMOs saying,
Yeah,
"Hey, you can't judge me after 2 months.
yeah,
give me 2 years of time, and then you will see the effect of my actions." So people trying to buy power and
mhm,
time in companies.
yeah.
Yeah.
What is your view on using experiments to inform MMM, or do you think it should be the other way that, MM should inform experiments?
I love that. No, so we've done that. We've done comparisons also in all of these cases. Basically, I say to clients here, when you bring me incrementality test results, I'll tell you openly what the MMM says in that period, in that region, or whatever. We can compare results. We can try to understand why there might be a difference. And then, if you can convince me that there shouldn't be a difference, or the difference should be smaller, then the incrementality test can inform the MMM. But the MMM has to explain much longer time frame than
Correct.
incrementality tests, which take place a couple of weeks, and it has to be true for much more conditions. And
Correct.
a lot of times incrementality tests go dark. They compare, like one click versus no click, which is the steepest part of the response curve. So the
Yeah.
incrementality test will look like it's a genius investment, but the MMM will have to describe also the non-genius investments up here on the curve, where you go from 7 to 8 clicks or something like that. So those are kind of the conditions you need to judge incrementality tests under. But I've been convinced that some things do make sense, and I've built them into MMMs, and they've worked out fine.
I mean, you talked about incrementality. The word
Mhm.
incrementality has become a buzzword of late, right? What is your opinion of this?
Um, I, I mean, it's just a really useful concept, I think.
Yeah,
Like if you want to optimize your marketing mix, incrementality is a necessary thought that
yeah.
comes up, and it's a really useful context in that concept in that context. So
Yeah, I
without,
mean, my co-founder and I mean, we think that, MM itself is a big incrementality test. I mean, if you think about it, if you disregard what the base is telling you, the rest
yeah,
of the things is incremental anyway, right?
yeah,
So I don't know
yes.
what people mean by saying that, hey, you should run an incrementality test on top of MM, it's yeah, but yeah.
I guess to yeah to actually know something,
Mhm.
have some point of validation. I think that's what clients want. Just not trust somebody blindly as a vendor, but have own data to battle with. And I think I like the battle attitude actually, right? So it's like I always tell clients, if you don't pay me to be of your opinion, you're paying me to be of a different opinion because different opinion is also a chance, right? So
Yeah.
if you knew it yourself directly and all the truths were there, there would be no competitive advantage for you to take care of.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
people are paying you to, hear something contrarian and not to, reinforce what you already know. I mean,
yeah,
that's a really good point. Let's talk about dichotomies in marketing, right? And let's play a quick rapid fire kind of game here.
yeah, sure.
Go to, state, opposing topics here. You can
Yeah,
just answer one of them. You don't have to
yeah.
elaborate on it. But
Okay,
if you wish to, you can go ahead and elaborate.
okay,
And you can also say pass if you don't want to answer, either of them, right?
okay,
So the
cool.
first is brand marketing versus performance marketing. Which would you choose?
Brand marketing.
Okay, you want to explain more,
So
or it's okay?
elaborate because I believe in long-term effects
Okay,
and long-term higher base over short-term gains.
great. Next up is Bayesian MMM versus Frequentist MMM.
Um, Bayesian MMM because would be lost with frequentist only.
Okay, Meridian or Robin.
Difficult call. Meridian because of geo levels.
Okay, correlation or regression.
It's like, regression, of course, but no, like we could
Okay,
derive a correlation from a regression, but yeah.
okay, MMM or MTA.
Oh, MMM.
Okay,
Until it's dead
uh,
again. Let's switch over.
MMM or experimentation.
MMM.
Mhm. ROAS or MROAS.
MROS. Definitely MROS.
Goodness of fit or prediction accuracy.
Prediction accuracy.
Okay,
Goodness of
uh,
it can be artificially inflated.
mhm. Les Bennett's 60-40 rule or Byron Sharp's How Brands Grow.
Byron Sharp, because if I don't answer Byron Sharp, he will haunt me on LinkedIn and comment on my posts.
Okay. That was a very quick rapid fire. Yeah, so thanks for your answers and
Yeah.
thanks for explaining a few of them. Uh, can you narrate an instance or instances where MM has worked for you? It could be your recent experience or from your past.
Um, where MMM has worked for a client or for me personally?
No, for your client, and it could be personally
Okay.
also. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean we even did I think I'm allowed to talk about that because we did an official video. It
Sure.
can be found on YouTube. So we together with an airline we had this situation which was before COVID, where they basically had to cut 20% of their marketing budget. So
Mhm.
they had to cut their budget by 20% overall. And so the marketing also had to cut 20% of the budget, ideally without, selling less tickets, which, as we know, isn't possible. But so they decided to work with us to figure out a way to, efficiently allocate the marketing budget so they wouldn't sell less tickets or at least, avoid selling as much tickets less as they could. And that worked out neatly. So that's a nice little case study you can actually find on YouTube, Newstar and SAS. So I want to Google that.
Sure.
So that worked
Yeah,
out
I'll
for the
catch up
client
on that.
there. Yeah.
I think that's a good, knowledge for everybody to have. I mean, how did this case study help everybody, right? What are
Yeah.
your views on AI progress? I'm pretty sure you must have seen, Google's AI overview being rolled out to all the countries. Do you think it'll kind of have an impact on marketing measurement overall in the coming years?
That's good question. I mean, obviously the walled gardens are all venturing into this field of marketing mix modeling and want to have their say there. I don't think that they're going to dominate the space. I think
Mhm.
the neutrality is a too strong argument, and the independence, assessing all these different channels, than going for cheap results by a vendor in this space. It might be a good idea for small and medium-sized companies which can't afford direct MMM vendor or don't want to afford it. But I guess large companies will value the neutrality of MMM, and also the independence of different walled gardens. And also there are integrations. So like TransUnion, for example, for MTA uses corporations with all these platforms, and
Mhm.
we also do measurement corporations. So it's not like they're not interested in what we're measuring, and they're not being open about it. But I think like they also see the benefit of having some independent vendors there, which assess media effectiveness.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I agree with your points here. Of course, people would prefer neutrality, and MM is here to stay.
Yeah.
Last question, Daniel. What advice would you give to someone looking to get started in MM or marketing measurement in general? Any resources that you would like to recommend, or any persons to follow?
Um, I mean, you could definitely look at the likes of Mark Ritson, or look at Les Binet. Is he called Les Binet? I always call him Le Binet, like a James Bond.
Okay, even I'm not sure. Maybe it's less
Sounds
Bennett.
like
Yeah,
a bad guy from James Bond. And then
yeah.
Byron Sharp, of course, really cool names. So start there, read up on that. And from the statistical side, I can't even really recommend any statistical courses that are more current. I think when I got into the field, it was much more structured by
Mhm.
classic statistical knowledge, but I know there's lots of great stuff you can just Google or read up on, or let AI pull up for and then of course there are podcasts now, which I never imagined was possible on MMM a couple of years ago. You can listen to and
Yeah,
get some inspirations. But I'm
great.
probably not a good person to recommend start into the field.
No, I think this whole podcast will serve as a good resource for, people looking to get started with MM, the rich information and your experience that you've shared. I think
Yeah,
it's going to be really worthwhile for all the people, who are looking to get started.
yeah.
Daniel, this was really a pleasure. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks
I'm
for
sure,
having me, Venkat. That
yeah,
was pretty fun.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
hope we keep talking, and
Definitely, I'm
yeah.
going to invite you more for, further discussions on MM, since
Okay.
you have already expressed that, you like Bayesian MM more. I would like to, pick your brain more and discuss more
Okay.
on that. Yeah, but in a fun way. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks
cool.
for your time, Daniel. It
Yeah,
was a
thanks
pleasure.
for having
Thank
me.
you. Yeah.
Talk soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.